Good morning, Cappuccino. Miss Castro here, talking about fractions again. So for our warm-up, we are going to reduce a couple of fractions, and then we're going to multiply and reduce these. These problems I got from the Math Space assignment. A lot of people were having a hard time with these. And then let's go ahead and do a tricky solving for x problem here. So I want you to try these problems without me, and I'm not going to show you the answers right now. Instead, at 12 o'clock, at 12 noon today, Mr. Alvarez is sending you an invitation to come and meet with us. Both me and Mr. Alvarez will be in the Zoom meeting, and we can go over the answers to these problems at that time. So have your answers ready, or if you don't know how to do it, just come to the meeting and we'll go over these problems. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. Here's your warm-up, and show up at 12 o'clock at the Zoom meeting. So I hope to see you all there. All right, so we are going to take some notes today, but before we take the notes, I want to go over the idea of division. Okay, we're going to talk about division. So I'm just going to get some scratch paper here. You do not have to write this down. Do not copy. Okay, you do not have to copy this down. We'll wait until we get back to the notebook, and then you can copy the notes. Okay, so division. Let's talk about division. Division. Okay, division. If I have 4 divided by 2, what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, let's first think about multiplication first, because division is the opposite of multiplication. So let's think about multiplication. If I ask you to multiply 2 times 2, we would get 4. And we would say 2 groups of 2 objects. Oops, I can't spell. Objects gives me 4 objects. Okay, 2 groups of 2 objects gives me 4 objects. So division is going backwards. It's saying I have 4 objects. I have 4 objects, and I want to divide that into groups of 2. Groups of 2. This would be how many groups do I get? So groups of 2 objects, objects. The answer here would be how many groups, the number of groups. This would be number of groups. Okay, so if I have 4 objects, 1, 2, 3, 4 objects. I have 4 objects, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to divide it into groups of 2. Well, 1, 2, and 1, 2. How many groups do I have? How many groups? I have 1 group, 2 groups. That gives me 2 groups. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Another way we could think of it, though, is we know we have the commutative property of multiplication. We could switch this. So another way we could think about it, 4 divided by 2, we could, again, it's 4 objects. 4 objects, and I'm dividing this into 2 groups. 2 groups. That's going to give me the number of items, the number of objects in each group. Number of objects in each group. Okay, so if I have my 4 objects, 4 objects, I'm going to divide it into 2 groups. So I'm making 2 groups, so I'm going to split it down the middle. I have 2 groups. One group is here, the second group is here. Athena, shh, my dogs are barking. So I split it into two groups, one group, two group. How many objects are in each group? How many? 1, 2. There are 2 objects in each group. So that's the other way of thinking about division. Okay, so we're going to divide this into, I shouldn't have said groups there, should I? We're going to divide it into 2 objects. We want to select 2 objects at a time. How many groups does that give me? So 2 objects at a time, 2 objects at a time. How many groups? 2 groups. And the other way of thinking about it is I have 4 objects. I want to make 2 groups. 1 group, 2 group. How many objects are in each group? 2. Okay, so 2 groups of 2 objects equals 4 objects. 4 objects that are divided into groups of 2 gives me 2 groups. Or 4 objects divided into 2 groups gives me 2 objects in each group. Okay, maybe Mr. Alvarez can go over that in Spanish during our meeting at 12 o'clock. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to think about it in terms of groups. We're going to do some more problems this way, thinking about we've got a certain number of objects and we're going to divide it into groups. So let's get going. So if I have 4 divided by 2, I'm going to have 4 objects. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, my phone is barking. Turn that off. Okay. So I have 4 objects. I'm going to divide that into 2 groups. So if I divide this into 2 groups, 1 group, 2 groups, how many objects are in each group? 1, 2 objects are in each group. So 4 divided into 2 groups gives me 2 objects in each group. All right, what if I have 3 divided by 2? 3 divided by 2. So I've got 3 objects. 3 objects. And I want to divide this into 2 groups. How can I divide this into 2 groups? I'm going to have to split this one in half to make 2 groups. This one's going to have to get split in half. So I have this as one group, and here's my other group. And my dogs are going to make me crazy. Oh, the mailman is here. That's why they're going crazy. Hold on. Crazy dog. Sorry about that. All right, so I've got 3 objects divided into 2 groups. 1 group, 2 group. How many objects are in each group? Well, I've got 1 1/2. That's 1 1/2. Okay, another way of writing 1 1/2 is 1.5, but there's another way of writing it. How many halves do I have? So if I split this into halves, I have 1, 2, 3 halves. So another way of writing that is I have 3 halves. Okay, so 3 divided by 2 is 3 over 2. And remember, this bar means divide by 2. 3 divided by 2. 3 divided by 2 is 3 divided by 2. All right, next one. What if I have 2 divided by 2? So I have 2 objects, and I'm going to divide it into 2 groups. 1 group, 2 groups. How many objects are in each group? 1. 2 divided by 2 equals 1. Okay, next one. 1 divided by 2. I have 1 object, and I'm going to start making my object bigger now. I have 1 object, and I want to divide it into 2 groups. How can I divide this into 2 groups? I'm going to have to cut it in half. So here's 1 group, and here's the second group. How much is in 1 group? 1/2. Half of an object. Half of an object. Hey, that should look familiar. 1 divided by 2, 1 divided by 2. So 1 object divided into two groups, one group, two groups, gives me half of an object. All right, let's keep going. What if I have half of an object? And I'm going to divide that into two groups. So again, I'm going to make kind of a big object. Here's my big object, but I'm only going to have half of it. So let me cut that in half. So I only have half. I'm starting out with half of an object. So I have half of an object. This right here is going to get divided into two groups. So if I take this and I divide it into two groups, one group, two groups, how much is in one group? Oops, wrong color. How much is in one group? Here's my one group. How much is that? How much is that? Well, I have one piece out of how many pieces? Is that out of 3 pieces? No, because the pieces are not all the same size. I need to make sure that I cut this into equal pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have one piece out of 4 in each group. One piece out of 4 pieces is in this group. 1/4 is in. So 1/2 divided by 2 is 1/4. Holy cow, what if we keep going? What if we take that answer, 1/4, and we divide that by 2? So we're going to take this picture again, and we want 1/4 of it. So let's cut this. That's halves. Let's cut it again. Here is 1/4. 1/4. 1 out of 4 pieces. So I have 1/4. Now I want to divide that into two groups. So just this part into two groups. 1, 2 groups. What is in each group? How much is this? Holy cow, that's getting really small. So it's one piece out of how many? Well, they all need to be the same size. So I need to cut these in half also. All the pieces have to be the same size. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That equals 1/8. So 1/2 divided by 2 equals 1/4. 1/4 divided by 2 equals 1/8. Do you see an interesting pattern? 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. 1/2 divided by 2 is 1/4. 1/4 divided by 2 is 1/8. Are you seeing anything interesting here? All right, let's do another one. Need more paper. Let's do another one. What if I have a whole number? 4 objects divided into half a group. Okay, what the heck is half a group? So let's think about this the other way. I'm going to think about this as 4 objects divided into groups that have half an object. Groups that have half an object. I'm going to do it the other way. So I'm going to have 4 objects. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want to divide it so that each group has half an object. So half an object would be this much. That's half an object. How many of those am I going to have? So I need to cut each of these in half. So 4 divided into half objects. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Gives me 8 groups. 4 divided into half objects. How many halves do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That gives me 8. I have 8 groups. Okay, what if I had 2 divided into half objects? So if I have 1, 2, and I want to divide those into half objects, divide those into halves, how many halves do I have? So I'm dividing it into half objects. How many of these do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. That equals 4. What if I did 3? 3 divided into half objects. So I've got 3 objects. 3 objects. I'm dividing it into halves. divided into halves. Here's a half. How many halves do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That equals 6. Okay, so let's look at this. I have, from the previous page, I have 1/2 divided by 2 is equal to 1/4. I have 1/4 divided by 2 is equal to 1/8. And then from this paper, I have 4 divided by 1/2 is equal to 8. And I have 2 divided by 1/2 is equal to 4. And then I have this extra one. 3 divided by 1/2 is equal to 6. What do you notice here? Do you notice a shortcut? Do you notice a shortcut? I notice that 2 times 2 is 4. That ends up on the bottom. 2 times 2 is 4. And then here, 4 times 2 is 8. But here, it's going top to bottom. 4 times 2 is 8. So notice it's kind of going the other way. 2 times 2 is 4. And 3 times 2 is 6. So how can I figure out a way of doing these problems without having to draw all these crazy pictures? So here's what's going on. If I have divide, I can rewrite this as 1/2, so we're going to take this one, 1/2 times 1/2. 1/2 times 1/2, 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4. So notice what I did. I kept the first number, and the divide by 2, I changed that to times by 1/2. Now, look when I do this one. I'm going to do this one now. I'm going to take my 4, and I'm going to change this to times, and I'm going to flip this, 2 over 1. So that gives me 4 times 2 is 8 over 1. What's 8 divided by 1? 8. So, if I have a number and it's dividing by a fraction, I can change it to multiplying by the second number flipped. We call that the reciprocal. Reciprocal. Let's see if it works over here. So 1/4 times, I'm going to take this number and I'm going to flip it. When I flip it, I have to put this on the bottom, and then since there's nothing on top, I'd put a 1. Okay? So 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 2 is 8. Oops, can you see that? Aha! So this one is the same thing as this one. Okay, let's try this one. 2, we're going to change it to times, and we're going to do the reciprocal, 2 over 1. 2 times 2 is 4 over 1. 4 divided by 1 is 4. So there is a fast way of dividing with fractions. We can change it to multiplication. So we can kind of see that when we're just looking at the problem. 4 times 2 gives me 8, but watch out here. 2 times 2 gives me 4, but it's in the denominator. So how can we change it so everything works just the same? Change it to multiplication. Then you can just multiply straight across. Okay, some of you might notice, wait a minute, what am I multiplying straight across here? Am I multiplying by 4? No. When you have a whole number, you can make it a fraction by putting it over 1. 4 divided by 1 is just 4. Okay, then we have 4 times 2 is 8, 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, same thing here. If it's a whole number, you can make it a fraction by putting it over 1. 2 times 2 is 4, 1 times 1 is 1, 4 divided by 1 is 4. All right, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to be dividing with fractions. So back to our notes. So you didn't have to write any of that down. Here's what we got to write down. Back to our notes. Here's my notes. Okay, here was yesterday's notes. Here we go. This is what we're going to write down. Division with fractions. We're going to change division to multiplication. So we're going to change division to multiplication by the reciprocal. Reciprocal is when you flip the number. So the reciprocal of 2 over 3 is 3 over 2. See how I took the numbers and I flipped them. What's the reciprocal of 4? Well, 4 isn't a fraction right now, so to make it a fraction, we put it over 1. Now I can flip it. 4 over 1, the reciprocal is 1 over 4. What if it's negative? Say I have negative 1/3. The reciprocal is still negative, but it's going to be negative 3 over 1, or just negative 3. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to change division to multiplication with the reciprocal. Okay, so we saw that over here. 4 divided by 1/2 is the same as 4 times the reciprocal of the second number. So this one, I'm going to have 4. I'm going to change it to multiply. Now what's the reciprocal of 2? Well, let's make it a fraction and then flip it. 1 over 2. Now my whole number here, I can put that over 1, and now we can multiply. So 4 times 1 over 1 times 2. So 4 times 1 over 1 times 2, which is, if we're thinking about Alex and Morgan, I'm doing it the Alex way. 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. What's 4 divided by 2? 2. And we knew that, right? 4 divided by 2, we already knew that. That's equal to 2. But here's showing it, doing it with a fraction. All right, next one. 4 divided by 1/2. So we're going to keep the first number, change to multiplication, and the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2 over 1. Okay, so we can rewrite the 4 as a fraction by putting it over 1, because 4 divided by 1 is 4. And now we can multiply. Multiply, multiply. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. What's 8 divided by 1? 8. And we did that one. We showed that in our drawings. 4 divided by 1/2. I have 8 groups of 1/2. So that worked out. So our shortcut works. Okay, let's try another one. 1/2 divided by 4. So keep the first number. Always keep the first number. Change to multiplication. What's the reciprocal of 4? Well, we got to make 4 a fraction and then flip it. So that would be 1/2 times 1/4. We're going to multiply, multiply, multiply. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 4 is 8. 1/8. And I think we did that one also in our pictures. Did we do that one? No, I can't find it. Nope, we didn't do that one with pictures. All right, the next one. 1/2. Change to multiply. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2 over 1. Then we're going to multiply. So we get 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. What's 2 divided by 2? 1. Next one. Rewrite the first fraction. Keep it the same. Change to multiply. Reciprocal of 1/3 is 3 over 1. So I get, I'm going to show you this one, something special. Look, 2 times 3 over 3 times 1. Why did I do that? Look what I have. I have 3 divided by 3. So I could actually do this the Morgan way. I can rewrite this as 3 times 2, okay, right? Commutative property over 3 times 1. Oh, check it out. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I'm left with 2 divided by 1, which is 2. Aha. All right, and the last one. I keep the first number, change to multiplication, and then I do the reciprocal. 1 over 6 is 6 over 1. Okay, so I can multiply these straight across, straight across, straight across. 4 times 6 over 9 times 1. Do I see any 1s? Not yet. Some of you might say, yeah, we can reduce that, but I'm going to go ahead and multiply it out. 4 times 6 is 36. 9 times 1 is 9. Hey, wait a minute. Can I do 36 divided by 9? I sure can. 36 divided... Oh, wait a minute. I made a mistake. That's not 36. Who is doing the multiplication here? Sorry, 4 times 6 is 24. Okay, can I divide 24 by 9? No, but I can rewrite these. 9 is 3 times 3. Is there a number times 3 that gives me 24? There sure is. 3 times 8. So I can reduce this one. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I'm left with 8 over 3. That's my final answer. All right, so that's what we're going to be practicing in Math Space today. Sorry the video was so long. Good thing I didn't go over the warm-up yet. So remember, show up today at 12 o'clock at the Zoom meeting. At the Zoom meeting, we're going to go over these problems, and if you need help with Math Space, we can talk about that also. Hope to see you all there, 12 o'clock at the Zoom meeting with Mr. Alvarez. Bye-bye.